Hello everyone, it's Eve here again, and today we're going to talk about availability on the shelves and can we actually use video for identification? Today I invited Adrian to talk about the discussion which we had this week, and we will summarize what are the findings we saw based on two retailers who experimented with this technology. So first of all, Adrian, please introduce yourself.
Hi Eve, yes, nice to see you again. My name is Adrian Beck. I'm an emeritus professor at the University of Leicester in the UK, and I'm also the academic advisor to the ECR Retail Loss Group.
Yeah, so this week's of ECR Loss Prevention Group discussions on video were focused on availability on the shelves and trying out a couple different technologies. So tell us first who were present and what were the technologies and what was the difference. Just so our listeners know, it was a very popular session. It was 96 participants and not only retailers, even though most of them from retail, others were from the packaged goods providers, as it really concerns them availability of the products on the shelves. So let's get into it. Who was the first retailer and what was the technology?
Yeah, sure. So we had two presentations, Eve. We had one from James Spencer from Walgreens, and then the other one was from Damien Pichot from a French retailer called Monoprix. And so they both presented on their initial attempts to begin to try and understand how they could use different types of video technologies to try and help them understand the level of on-shelf availability that they had in their stores.
And what was the first technology? How did it work?
Yeah, sure. So Walgreens went first, James went first, and he really just described how they were using their system to try and understand when they were out of stock on their shelves. And they were really very much in a trial phase. It was just being used in one store at the moment. And what was interesting about their example was they were trying to use existing video technology. So they were using the cameras they already had in the store, which is a really interesting way of trying to manage costs associated with this sort of exercise. And so they were really trying to understand how they could use these videos and the associated analytics to begin to identify when certain stocks were not available on the shelf. Can they begin to train the system to begin to understand when there's an empty space on the shelf? And he went through and he explained some of the issues they'd had and some of the challenges that they were facing. But actually, on the whole, they were getting some pretty promising results in terms of beginning to train the system to understand what an out of stock might look like across a wide range of different types of products.
So advantage of that was, first of all, that they used existing camera. My understanding, they didn't change the lighting condition, even though they saw that the lighting condition, of course, is very important for the accuracy of the solution. Also, what they mentioned was that they need around not less than 600, 650 images to train the system. And they saw the significant increase in accuracy in comparison to 300 images and so on. So overall, I believe what they said that they were quite satisfied from the business and cost effectiveness of the solution because of the existing infrastructure. However, they are in the moment considering if it's a scalable business case for throughout a retail chain. Correct me if I missed something.
Yeah, sure. I mean, but part of this was trying to understand how many images they need, and they found it did vary depending on the type of products. You know, they were seeing variances between, for instance, the health and beauty aisles compared with the cereals aisle, and so on. And so they were really interested in just understanding, you know, what they needed to do to begin to get the system to provide a level of reliability that could then be of some value to the business. So it was really much, you know, a scoping exercise, this, to understand the potential of the technology and what they would need to do to begin to scale it out. But as you say, you know, the real issue around this, and indeed video analytics in general, is the way it begins to deal with the specific context in which it's being used. And Walgreens has certainly got a lot of different store formats, different lighting situations. There's a whole range of factors in there that can begin to negatively influence the performance of video analytics. And so they were really on a journey to understand what those factors might be and how reliable this sort of system could end up being for them as they think about beginning to scale up.
And also, I think it's important to mention that he also pointed out that they made the camera positions to cut out people from the view, so to make it as private as possible. So that was another parameter for them, which is very important when you're considering the technology. So yes, that's and. Do you remember if he mentioned anything on amount of cameras which you need per aisle, or like what was the strategy around the coverage?
Yeah, I mean, what was interesting was that they were using existing zoom pan tilt cameras. So they had very few, actually. I think it was 3 or 4 cameras covering the aisles that they were interested in. And then really getting those cameras to zoom in on the shelves and begin to move around in an automated fashion, taking images of different parts of the products that they're interested in. But it was very few cameras, and there were existing cameras, which is often a question that comes up with this, isn't it? Which is, do we have to buy lots of new kit to begin to get this to work? And what Walgreens were trying out there was, can we use what we've already got?
And I think before that we go to the second solution, one last point he mentioned that they were not planning to give like a real-time alarm on when the products are not available on the shelves. It was for investigation purposes and for rather analysis of the whole availability a little bit later.
Yeah, this was very much proof of concept, and so they were beginning to think through, first of all, can we get reliable information? And once you begin to get over that initial hurdle of confidence in the data, the next stage then obviously is to say, okay, what are we now going to do with this information? And critically, who are we going to give it to in order for them to take some action on that? And I think that was the next phase, to say, how do we begin to communicate with the store staff to say, hey, look, within your store at this moment in time, you've got X% of product that is currently out of stock. You may want to go and try and deal with that issue by restocking those shelves, particularly on the products that are, fast moving lines in that particular store.
So let's get to the second solution. That was completely different approach. So what type of sensors did they use and how did it work for them?
Yes, so Monoprix adopted a different approach, which was they were placing cameras actually on the shelf edge, looking across to the other side of the aisle, as it were. And what was interesting about the case that they were trying out, and again, it was another pilot study, it was in relatively few stores. I think it was 5 stores they were trying this in, which was they were trying to integrate the video images with the electronic shelf edge technology that they were using as well within that store. So it was a really interesting case of beginning to integrate two flows of data to understand the issue of inventory and inventory accuracy and out of stocks. They were saying, let's use the video to understand what the shelf looks like, but also supplement that image with the information from the shelf edge electronic label to say, and this is what the product should be, given what our planogram is saying. So it was a different approach that they were adopting. They were investing obviously in far more cameras. They had to place cameras on the shelves. And I think somebody suggested that they were covering something like about 80 items per camera. So
80 items per camera, exactly. I just wanted
sure.
to know that, yeah.
But again, they were getting pretty good results, and I think the results were good because of, obviously they were getting a much more optimum positioning of the camera. It's always ideal when you can get it down to shelf level to begin to look into the shelves. That was an issue that
view as well. It is a direct view.
Yes, exactly, and that's obviously one of the issues that Walgreens had, is that their cameras were situated on the ceiling, looking downwards, which is always going to have issues with product at the bottom of the shelf. So, they were getting better positioning of the cameras, but obviously they needed to invest in all the infrastructure that would go with those cameras. But they were making use of the existing data they had from the electronic shelf edge. So it was again another interesting case. They recognised that it was a pilot. They were trying to understand what they would then use that data for, and how they would begin to communicate that data to staff within the stores and elsewhere. So again, another example, different sort of technology, but I think showing some promising results within a given context.
Yeah, I think they reported more than 80% accuracy, which is a very positive result. So now it's the question about amount of sensors. And I think the last thing to mention that they are testing it on the larger products in comparison to makeup and cosmetics. So they're yet to understand how well it will work in the small items.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So again, they were looking to see how they might begin to roll this out. And for me, one of the big lessons from the presentations, both of them, was the importance of testing and calibration of these systems. Both retailers, I think, were really good examples of where they'd invested time and energy in making sure that they could understand how and in what circumstances this system might begin to benefit their organizations. Both understood it isn't simply a plug in and forget technology. You've got to manage this system. You've got to make sure that it's calibrated precisely for the environment in which you want it to work.
Well, and in both cases, we see that, yes, they are in the learning stage, but they already started the process. So we applaud to them for that. And definitely for us, it's very important to know how it goes and how we will create the business case furthermore, because we definitely see the appetite for this technology, and it looks like it's getting there. Like with every analytic, you need a learning curve.
Yeah, for me, it was great because we've traditionally always thought about video, haven't we, around a safety and security aspect. That's been the focus of the vast majority of investment ever since retailers began thinking about using video. And here, we've got examples now of where video is being used in a non-security and safety environment. Here it's about trying to drive sales and improve customer satisfaction. And so it's great to see people beginning to innovate and test around using video beyond the traditional boundaries that we normally see it being used.
Exactly. Well, we're looking forward to actually look at the results and to see how it grows in the near future. But for now, we will just a little bit sit and wait. So next question, what is the next discussion? When is it going to be? And what is an exciting topic we should be waiting for?
Yeah, so the next session is on the 14th of April, and it's on collaboration. And what we're trying to look at here is how can organizations begin to collaborate within their own organizations to get greater value from the use of video. And here we've just had a great example, as we've just been talking, of how we can begin to use it in a non-security setting. So we're going to try and come up with a couple of retailers who are going to share their experiences of how they've been able to try and get different parts of the organization to begin to utilize the video systems that they've got within their businesses to try and obviously maximize the investment. And so that should be great. We'll be looking for retailers who are really drawing in different elements of their businesses to hopefully really get some value from what can be a considerable investment in video technologies, but also as we've seen this week, it's got some really interesting potential as well.
That really interests me, this topic, because this is my daily conversation with my customers. It's all about cross collaboration. Who should sit at the table? It used to be a security function, especially when the analog solution. So it's a recording. It's a let's say deterrent function and investigation function plus. But now it goes far beyond that. We're having IT at the table. We need to think about cybersecurity. We need to actually talk to operations and marketing, because you can reuse the same system for occupancy, for queue management, for business intelligence, and so many interesting applications which are available. And I believe as the industry, we're getting slow towards accepting these technologies and talking about it with your own organization. So I'm looking forward to see how it's changing. Thank you, Adrian, for joining me. I will be catching up with you a week before, as usual, and we will create our sneak peek for you, our dear listeners. And for today, I wish you a good evening and hope to see you soon.
Cheerio. Bye-bye. Thanks, Eve.